My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 36 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed that if you worked hard, stayed responsible, and treated your family well, they would eventually treat you the same way. I was wrong. 3 years ago, I bought my first house in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even particularly big. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small backyard, a 2-car garage, and a kitchen that I had slowly renovated myself. But it was mine. Every payment came from my salary. Every repair came out of my pocket. Every piece of furniture had a story behind it. And after years of renting tiny apartments, that house represented something much bigger than property. It represented freedom. I thought my parents understood that. I thought my older brother, Jason, understood it too. I couldn't have been more wrong. It was a Tuesday evening in October when everything changed. I had just come home from work. I remember dropping my keys onto the kitchen counter, taking off my jacket, and opening a bottle of water. Then I heard a knock. 3 hard knocks. I looked through the window. My parents were standing on my porch, and behind them was a moving truck. I opened the door. Mom? Dad? What are you doing here? My mother smiled. Surprise. I looked past her at the truck. What's going on? My father stepped forward. We're moving in. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because I thought they were joking. You're what? My mother walked past me. We're staying with you for a while. I turned around. Mom, you can't just move into my house. She looked at me like I had said something ridiculous. We're your parents, Daniel. That sentence would become one of the most painful sentences I'd ever hear. Because somehow, being their son had become an excuse for them to ignore every boundary I had. My father walked inside carrying a box. We'll explain everything later. I stood in the doorway watching strangers unload my parents' belongings into my home. Their furniture, their clothes, their kitchen boxes, their bedroom lamps, even their old television. Everything was coming inside. I finally stopped the movers. Wait, where exactly are you putting all this? My mother answered from upstairs. Our room. I froze. Our room. She came back down. The guest room, obviously. I stared at her. Mom, that room is my office. You can work somewhere else. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Then my father put his hand on my shoulder. Son, we're family. We need each other. That night, I learned something I wish I had understood years earlier. Sometimes people don't ask permission because they already believe you'll feel too guilty to say no. And my parents knew me well enough to know exactly where my weakness was. My family. If you're enjoying this story, take a second to subscribe to the channel. We share emotional family stories about betrayal, difficult choices, forgiveness, and the moments that completely change people's lives. And trust me, what happened next in my house was something I never imagined my own family could do. Because my parents weren't the only ones coming. I just didn't know it yet. For the first few days, I tried to convince myself everything would be temporary. My mother said they needed somewhere to stay because they were having problems with their landlord. My father said they were looking for another place. 2 or 3 weeks, my mother promised. I agreed. I didn't want to be heartless. I was their son. So I moved my desk into my bedroom. I cleared half the closet. I gave them the guest room. And I tried to keep the peace. But within a week, things started changing. My mother began rearranging my kitchen. She threw away food because she didn't like the brands I bought. She replaced my coffee machine. She complained about the furniture. Then one morning, I came downstairs and found my framed photographs removed from the living room. What happened to these? My mother didn't even look up. They didn't match the house. They're my pictures. I know. Then why did you take them down? She sighed. Daniel, don't make everything into an argument. That became her favorite sentence. Don't make everything into an argument. Whenever I objected, I was causing drama. Whenever I asked for privacy, I was selfish. Whenever I reminded them that the house belonged to me, I was disrespectful. Then one Friday night, my father told me something that made my stomach drop. Jason is coming tomorrow. I looked up. My brother. Yes. For dinner. My father shook his head. No. He's staying here. I stared at him. For how long? My mother answered. Until he gets back on his feet. I laughed nervously. Wait, Jason is moving in too. Nobody answered. And that silence told me everything. My parents hadn't just moved into my house. They had made a decision about my house. Without me. The next morning, Jason arrived. He didn't come alone. He had 2 suitcases, 3 large boxes, a gaming computer, and the confidence of someone who already believed he belonged there. He walked through my front door and looked around. Nice place. I said nothing. He dropped his bags near the stairs. So which room is mine? I looked at my parents, then at Jason, then at the house I had worked years to buy. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't being asked to help my family. I was being replaced in my own home. Jason was 39, older than me by 3 years. Growing up, he had always been the favorite. He was charming, funny, confident. Whenever he made a mistake, my parents called it a phase. Whenever I made a mistake, they called it irresponsibility. Jason had changed jobs several times, started businesses that failed, borrowed money from relatives, missed payments, and somehow every time he needed help, my parents. I had spent years watching it happen, but I had never imagined the rescue would eventually involve my house. Jason chose the largest bedroom, the master bedroom. My parents had already taken the guest room. So I asked him what he was doing. He laughed. Relax, Daniel. I'm not stealing your room. Then why are you moving your stuff into it? Because Mom said I could. I looked at my mother. She shrugged. He needs space. So do I. Jason smiled. You're always so dramatic. That was the moment something inside me changed. I wasn't angry because Jason needed help. I was angry because everyone had decided that my opinion didn't matter. Over the next 2 weeks, Jason slowly took control. He started parking his truck in the garage. He put his tools everywhere. He installed a television in the living room. Then he invited friends over without asking me. One Saturday night, I came home to find 6 people sitting in my living room. Music was playing. Pizza boxes covered the table. Someone had left a beer bottle on my desk. I looked at Jason. What is this? He grinned. Just friends. You could have asked. He rolled his eyes. It's my house too now. I stared at him. No, it isn't. The room went silent. My mother walked in. Daniel. I turned toward her. This is my house. She shook her head. We're family. That's not an answer. My father stepped between us. Son, your brother is going through a difficult time. So am I. Nobody responded. That night, I went upstairs and locked my bedroom door. I sat on the edge of my bed. For the first time since buying that house, I didn't feel safe there. I felt like a guest. A week later, I received a notification from my bank. There was a new charge on my home internet account. Then another. Then I discovered Jason had ordered several expensive items using my address. I confronted him. What are these? He looked at the receipts. Stuff I need. Why is it being delivered here? Because I live here. You've been here 6 weeks. And this was supposed to be temporary. He laughed. According to who? I stared at him. According to Mom. Jason looked toward the kitchen. Mom? She walked over. What happened? I explained. She sighed. Daniel, Jason needs stability. And I don't. You have a job. So that means I don't deserve my own house? My father finally spoke. Don't talk to your mother like that. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't insulting anyone. I was simply asking why my own house had become a family shelter without my permission. That evening, I went outside. I sat on the back steps. The neighborhood was quiet. The streetlights were glowing. And I thought about my first night in that house. I had stood in the empty living room holding the keys. I had felt proud, free, hopeful. Now I was sitting outside because I didn't want to go inside my own home. Then my phone rang. It was my best friend, Marcus. He asked how things were going. I hesitated. Then I finally said, I think my family is taking over my house. Marcus was quiet. Then he said something I never forgot. Daniel, they're not taking over your house. I frowned. What do you mean? They're taking advantage of you. I didn't want to believe him. But deep down, I knew he was right. Things got worse after that. My parents stopped talking about leaving. Instead, they started talking about improvements. My mother wanted to renovate the kitchen. My father wanted to build a storage shed. Jason wanted to turn part of the garage into a workshop. Nobody asked me. One evening, I came home early from work. As I walked toward the front door, I heard voices. My parents and Jason were in the kitchen. I stopped. I wasn't trying to listen. But then I heard my name. Daniel won't throw us out. It was Jason. I froze. My mother answered. He loves us. Jason laughed. Exactly. My father said something I couldn't hear. Then Jason spoke again. Once I've got the garage set up, I'm going to start the business here. My mother said. And Daniel. Jason laughed. He'll complain for a few days. Then he'll get over it. My heart sank. Then my mother said something that hurt even more. We raised him to take care of family. I stepped backward. Suddenly, everything made sense. They weren't planning to leave. They were planning a future in my house. Without me, I opened the door. Everyone became silent. Jason looked at me. Oh, you're home. I walked into the kitchen. What business? Nobody answered. I looked at my parents. What business is he starting in my garage? My father sighed. It's complicated. No, it's actually very simple. Jason stood up. You're making this bigger than it is. Are you planning to live here permanently? He crossed his arms. I don't know. Are mom and dad? My mother looked away. That was my answer. I felt something break inside me. Not anger. Trust. I said, everyone has 30 days to make other arrangements. My mother looked shocked. You wouldn't. I would. My father stood. After everything we've done for you? I stared at him. Everything you've done for me? He nodded. We raised you. And I appreciate that. Then you owe us. I took a breath. No, Dad. I don't owe you my home. The room went completely silent. Jason stepped closer. You're really going to throw your parents out? They moved in without asking me. They're old. They're not helpless. My mother started crying, and that nearly destroyed my resolve. She looked at me and whispered, after all we've sacrificed for you? I felt guilty. For a moment, I almost apologized. Then I remembered the conversation I'd overheard. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing the house. I walked upstairs. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2:13 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. I opened my door. Jason was standing there. What are you doing? He stared at me. You're making a mistake. No, you're choosing a house over your family. I looked at him. No, Jason. I paused. I'm choosing myself. He shook his head. You'll regret this. Maybe he thought that would scare me. It didn't. What scared me was what happened the following morning. I found the locks on my garage had been changed. I walked into the kitchen holding the new lock. Who changed this? Jason looked up from his coffee. I did. Why? Security. You changed the lock on my garage? Our garage. I slammed the lock onto the counter. Change it back. He stood. No. My father immediately came into the room. What's going on? I pointed at Jason. He changed my locks. My mother sighed. Daniel, please. No. I looked at all three of them. This ends today. My father became angry. You're being disrespectful. I've been respectful for months. You're throwing your own family out. You moved in without asking. My mother cried again. Jason shook his head. Then he said the sentence that finally destroyed the last bit of guilt I had. You'll never be anything without this family. I stared at him. I thought about every time I had helped him, every loan I had given him, every time I had covered for him, every birthday gift, every emergency, every time I had listened to him complain about his life. And suddenly I realized something. I wasn't helping Jason become independent. I was helping him avoid becoming independent. I looked at him. You're right about one thing. He smiled. What? This family has spent my whole life making me feel guilty for having boundaries. His smile disappeared. I walked upstairs. I opened my laptop. I contacted an attorney. I explained everything. The attorney told me something important. The house was legally mine. My parents had no ownership interest. My brother had no ownership interest. But because they had been living there, I needed to handle the situation properly. I followed the legal process. I documented everything. I changed passwords. I secured financial accounts. I moved important documents. And then I gave them written notice. 30 days. No screaming. No threats. No revenge. Just a boundary. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to make everyone happy. I was trying to protect my own life. The next few weeks were brutal. My mother barely spoke to me. My father called relatives. Suddenly, I was the villain. My aunt called me. How could you do this to your parents? I asked her. Did they tell you they moved into my house without asking? She went quiet. My cousin called me selfish. A family friend said I needed to forgive. Nobody asked why my family had decided they were entitled to my home. Then something unexpected happened. Marcus came over. He sat with me in the kitchen. You know what I think? What? You're finally learning that saying no doesn't make you a bad person. I looked around the room. For months, I had been afraid of losing my family. But I was beginning to realize. I had already lost the version of my family I thought I knew. The 30 days passed slowly. On the final morning, I woke up before sunrise. I walked downstairs. Boxes were everywhere. My mother was packing the kitchen. My father was loading the truck. Jason was angry. He didn't speak to me. At around 9 in the morning, my mother came into the living room. She sat down. Daniel. I looked at her. I want you to know something. I waited. You hurt me. I nodded. I know. I never thought my own son would do this. I swallowed. Mom, I didn't ask you to leave because I don't love you. She looked at me. Then why? Because I love myself enough to stop letting people hurt me. She looked away. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she said, Your brother thinks you'll come running when he needs you. I smiled sadly. He might be right. She looked surprised. But this time, I continued, I won't. My father came into the room. We're ready. Jason walked past me without saying goodbye. At the front door, my father stopped. He looked back at the house, then at me. You're really doing this? Yes. He nodded slowly. Then I hope you're happy. The door closed. I stood there alone. For the first time in months. The house was silent. I walked through every room. The kitchen. The living room. The hallway. My office. My bedroom. Then I opened the windows. Fresh air came inside. I sat on the living room floor. And I cried. Not because I was sad they were gone. Because I was finally able to breathe. But the story didn't end there. 3 months later, I received a phone call. It was my mother. She said Jason had moved out. He had lost another job. He needed money. She asked if I could help. I said, I can help him find resources. She paused. He needs money. I can't give him money. She sounded disappointed. Daniel. I interrupted gently. Mom, I'm not abandoning him. Then why won't you help? Because every time I rescue Jason, he learns that someone else will fix his problems. She became quiet. Then she said, Maybe you're right. That was the first time my mother had ever said those words to me. A few months later, my parents rented a small apartment. Jason found work. And slowly, the family began to change. Not because I forced them. Because I stopped rescuing everyone. A year later, my mother invited me to Thanksgiving dinner. I almost didn't go, but I decided to. When I arrived, my father opened the door. He hugged me. It felt strange, but good. My mother had prepared all my favorite dishes. Jason was there too. He looked different. Older. More humble. After dinner, we sat around the table. Nobody mentioned the house. Nobody blamed anyone. Finally, Jason looked at me. I owe you an apology. I didn't say anything. He continued. I thought because you were my younger brother, you owed me. I looked down. You didn't. I know that now. My mother reached across the table. We all learned something. I smiled. What? She said. Family doesn't mean you get unlimited access to someone's life. My father nodded. And helping someone doesn't mean letting them destroy what you've built. I looked at them. For years, I had believed family meant sacrificing yourself. Now I understood something different. Family should mean supporting each other, not controlling each other, not manipulating each other, not making someone feel guilty for saying no. That night, when I drove home, I parked in my driveway. The same driveway where my parents' moving truck had once arrived without warning. I walked inside. The house was quiet. My house. But this time, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. I went upstairs. I stood by the window. And I realized something. I hadn't kicked my family out because I hated them. I kicked them out because I finally understood that love without boundaries can become another form of control. My parents needed to learn how to stand on their own. Jason needed to learn how to take responsibility for his life. And I needed to learn that being a good son didn't mean destroying myself to keep everyone else comfortable. Sometimes the hardest thing you can say to the people you love is, no, not because you don't care, but because you finally care enough about yourself to stop accepting disrespect. And maybe that's what growing up really means. Not leaving your family behind, but learning where their life ends and yours begins. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with strangers. They're fought inside the families we thought would always protect us.